here, Genesis 27, Jacob steals Esau's blessing. Or Jacob gets Isaac's blessing. Or Jacob's stolen blessing. Or Jacob's deception. Those are the different headings in the 4 different versions that I am reading from. Primarily, again, I'm usually going through NLT. If something comes up as a discrepancy or a little confusing, for clarity, I usually try to go to these other ones. Just for this purpose. Like when I'm just doing a regular reading, to be honest, just as an aside, usually I use YouVersion because there are so many translations right at my fingertips. It's particularly challenging. Then I'm going to go not just at NLT, I might look at, the ESV, the English Standard Version, or then I might go to the Amplified Bible or to the Message, or I'm just going to read it in a lot of different versions and then go back to it and then kind of prayerfully try to discern these things. If at that point I'm still very confused, what I will usually do after I've tried making as many notes and observations as I can, what I will usually do at that point is then I will go and read some commentaries so that I'm not looking through a lens of someone else's, revelation from God, trusting that God's going to specifically reveal something to me, or even point me at that point to the right commentary. That's just an aside. I don't know, because you might be reading things other than this. You might be doing some Bible study other than this. You might get the verse of the day from YouVersion or from Bible Gateway or whatever you use, and if you don't use either of those things, I would point you to those. They're free and they're awesome resources. But that's usually my pattern. And as you encounter verses or verses of the day or difficult passages in a Bible study, then maybe do that. Maybe do some of the legwork first. I don't get on here every time and go, oh, God, I want to pray that you'll reveal something through your word of truth, through your Holy Spirit. But I do pray these things, individually, for myself, like going into these things, and I'm trying to just actively, keep those open eyes and that open heart and that open mind so that it would reveal something new. And I believe that is something that always happens when we look and when we put in that effort. When you seek me with your whole heart, you will find me, says God. And I just as an aside from this face value part of this, I just want to encourage you to keep digging in and to dig in and to do some work. And if you have questions about it, even if it's not about this, like reach out. Let's talk about it, And I'm not going to go, well, let's read it for the very first time. I'm not going to do it there. I'm just going to go, this is what I've learned. This is my understanding. Let's talk about it. So just an aside. But anyway, now we're at 27, and it is Jacob steals Esau's blessing. So when Isaac was old and almost blind, he called for Esau, his older son, Harry is what I keep calling him, and said, "My son." "Yes, father," Esau replied. We know from previous chapter that Harry, or Esau, is Isaac's favorite. He's the hunter, he's the provider, he's insanely hairy, and he's not too concerned with future things. He's very much a now person, because he basically sold away his birthright for some stew to his brother Jacob, who is also known as the deceiver, who is his wife Rebekah's favorite, Isaac's wife, Rebekah's favorite. Okay, so just giving a little backstory there. I am an old man now, Isaac says in verse 2, and I expect every day to be my last. Oh, man. Take your bow and a quiver full of arrows out into the open country and hunt some wild game for me. Prepare it just the way I like it, so it's savory and good, and bring it here for me to eat. We know that that's something that he loved, because that was also said. He loved, he was his favorite because, he loved the game that he brought home. He loved the meat. That's my providing, hunting son. He gives me the meat. I love him. He literally brings home the bacon. Well, he doesn't bring home bacon, because culturally that would be bad. But whatever. Anyway, he brings this. He says, bring it here for me to eat. Then I will pronounce the blessing that belongs to you, my firstborn son, before I die. So he's saying, look, my time's growing short. I want to give you this blessing, but I want you to bless me first. Will you please go get my favorite meal? Go get some. Bring me some of that meat. Make a savory stew. Bring it here for me. Interesting. Verse 5. But Rebekah overheard the conversation. Rebekah, whose favorite is not Harry or Esau. Her favorite is Jacob. She overhears the conversation. So when Esau left to hunt for the wild game, she said to her son Jacob, I overheard your father asking Esau to prepare him a delicious meal of wild game. He wants to bless Esau in the Lord's presence before he dies. She says, this is what I overheard. This is what he wants to do. And now, my son, do exactly as I tell you. Oh boy. Trauma. This is where you go to the commercial break. The Real Housewives of Beersheba. Okay, so here we go. 9. Go out to the flocks and bring me 2 fine young goats. I'll prepare your father's favorite dish from them. Take the food to your father and he can eat it and bless you instead of Esau before he dies. Seems like an interesting plan. And this is where Jacob replies. Jacob the trickster, Jacob the deceiver, at verse 11. But mother, Jacob replied, he won't be fooled that easily. Notice that he doesn't say, that's wrong to do, Mom. He just says, that's not going to work. Like, that's interesting. That speaks to both of their character. Okay. Think how hairy Esau is and how smooth my skin is. What if my father touches me? He'll see that I'm trying to trick him. I love that he says he'll see. He'll see that I'm trying to trick him. And then he'll curse me instead of blessing me. So he's not worried that this is the wrong thing to do. He's just worried about being caught. Oh, man. Interesting that's the response there. And that, they're just both like, this might work. It's just because he's not going to see it, but if he touches me, he's going to know. So that's just speaking to how almost blind Isaac is. And again, the heart of Jacob at that point. He's going to curse me instead of blessing me. 13. Let the curse fall on me, dear son, said Rebekah. Just do what I tell you. Go out and get the goats. She's like, I'll claim that curse, okay? You'll be blessed. Just trust me is basically what she's saying. Like, I got this. Interesting. Verse 14. So Jacob followed his mother's instructions, bringing her the 2 goats. She took them and cooked a delicious meat dish just the way Isaac liked it. She's like, oh, I know exactly what I want. Get this. Okay, this is going to work because he's going to be thinking with his stomach. Okay. Yeah. Then she took Esau's best clothes, which were there in the house, and dressed Jacob with them. Okay, so he got the clothes, all right. She made him a pair of gloves from the hairy skin of the young goats, and she fastened a strip of the goat's skin around his neck. Then she gave him the meat dish with its rich aroma and some freshly baked bread. Jacob carried the platter of food to his father and said, my father, which, notice, like this is a natural thing. He says, yes, father, earlier, says Esau. This is a typical way to address father. But one we see, as he's trying to be Esau, Jacob steps into this. Yes, my son, he answered. Who is it, Esau or Jacob? So you see right off the bat that Isaac doesn't know which one it is. He says, yes, my son. I know it's one of my sons. Which one are you? 19, Jacob replied, it's Esau, your older son. I've done as you told me. I don't know if he was disguising his voice or not, but we'll find out. I've done as you told me. Here is the wild game, cooked the way you like it. Sit up and eat it so you can give me your blessing. He's like, go ahead and eat this. It's so good. I prepared it just like you asked me to. Why don't you go ahead and eat it and then bless me so I can be on my way, right? Isaac asked, how were you able to find it so quickly, my son? Isaac's a little suspicious here. Wait a minute. You had to hunt them and you had to prepare this. How'd you do that so quickly? Because Rebekah wasted no time. Because the Lord your God put it in my path, Jacob replied. Oh, what a deceiver. He's living in that namesake. Then Isaac said to Jacob, come over here. I want to touch you to make sure you really are Esau. So you see this suspicion coming on. So Jacob went over to his father, and Isaac touched him. The voice is Jacob's, but the hands are Esau's, Isaac said to himself. So we get this thing into his mind. He says this to himself. I love that we get the thoughts and the internal monologues or the doubts or the motivations behind some people in this. I love that. Which also, I would say, just for a second, shows that the Lord knows the thoughts and the hearts of men. Because it's recorded here. His Holy Spirit recorded the Bible through scribes, through prophets, through, those that he wanted to record. Yes, man wrote this, but man wrote it by the divine guidance of God's Holy Spirit. That's the only precursor thing. Again, I'm referencing 2 Timothy 3:16 because I'm trying to do this as a face value. What am I getting from this? Not overhearing other sermons, just what pops out here and what are we building on as a foundation of God's knowledge. But knowing that that's one of the precursors, I just want to say that that's something that I'm taking from this moment right here. That when we get those little thoughts and asides, it just points to the notion, or the truth, I guess not even the notion, it points to the truth to me that God knows the thoughts and the hearts, the minds, the motivations of people. And since we get those not only from faithful people, but people who are sinning openly against God or who are not of the faith and are not part of God's nation, then I would say that there's no locked mind. There's none that are out of sight of the Lord, I guess. But I'd have to go back to very specific things to kind of defend that. So I don't want to draw a line in the sand here. But that's what it points to for me. So just an interesting thing. Interesting that we get that. Isaac said to himself, the hands are Esau's. But he did not recognize Jacob because Jacob's hands felt hairy just like Esau's. So Isaac pronounced his blessing on Jacob. Are you really my son Esau? He asked. Yes, of course, Jacob replied. Then Isaac said, now my son, bring me the meat. I will eat it, and then I will give you my blessing. So Jacob took the food over to his father, and Isaac ate it. He also drank the wine that Jacob served him. And Isaac said, come here and kiss me, my son. So notice that it said in verse 23, he did not recognize Jacob because Jacob's hands felt hairy just like Esau's. So Isaac pronounced his blessing on Jacob. That what we see following is kind of like here's what happened, here's how it went down. We see a pattern to that, and I know that can be confusing sometimes. So I just want to notice that we've seen a pattern just in the way that the Bible records things. Like here's creation story, here's how that went down in the days. Let me go back to when man was created. Here's what's going to happen with Noah. Here's what is happening. Let me go back and kind of flesh this out a little bit. So I just want to notice that's not necessarily a part of God's pattern. That's a pattern that we see in the way that the Bible explains things to us. So that's just something that I'm noticing right now. So Isaac pronounced his blessing on Jacob, and then it goes through saying that. Cool. Gets to 26. Come here and kiss me, my son. This is after he's taken part of the meal. Great. 27. So Jacob went over and kissed him, and when Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he was finally convinced, and he blessed his son. He said, the smell of my son is the good smell of the open fields that the Lord has blessed. May God always give you plenty of dew for healthy crops and good harvests of grain and wine. May many nations become your servants. May you be the master of your brothers. May all your mother's sons bow low before you. All who curse you are cursed, and all who bless you are blessed. As soon as Isaac had blessed Jacob, and almost before Jacob had left his father, Esau returned from his hunting trip. Esau prepared his father's favorite meat dish and brought it to him. Then he said, I'm back, father, and I have the wild game. Sit up and eat it so you can give me your blessing. Ruh-roh. there's a little skip here in your video because like right after I said ruh-roh, or as I was saying it, I got a weird low battery thing and the door opened. So sorry, but it was like a dun dun dun, and then like I got to experience a nice little commercial break. So now you have, because I said that. So anyway, the plan works. Obviously, Jacob gets this blessing, but then Esau returns almost before Jacob had left his father. And I got the dish, the wild game, sit up and eat so you can give me your blessing. Just, oh my goodness. What? 32, Isaac asked him, who are you? Why? That's not going according to plan for Esau. Harry at this point is going to be like, excuse me? Why, it's me, of course, he replied. It's Esau, your older son. No, Dad, please, this is not the time to go see now. Like your sight's gone. Please don't, no, not Alzheimer's too at this point. Like he's freaking out. Isaac began to tremble uncontrollably and said, then who was it that just served me the wild game? I have already eaten it, and I blessed him with an irrevocable blessing before you came. Like, I can't take this back. So he's just filled with like, what? Oh my goodness. When Esau understood, I love that. When Esau understood, what do you mean? What's irrevocable mean? It doesn't paint Esau to be like the brightest person. He's a great hunter and provider, obviously, very skilled in that. But like, I mean, he gave away his birthright already. I love that that's just in there. When Esau understood, he let out a loud and bitter cry. Oh, my father, bless me too, he begged. But Isaac said, your brother was here and he tricked me. He has carried away your blessing. Esau said bitterly, no wonder his name is Jacob. Because, again, the footnote says, Jacob means he grasped the heel, and this can also figuratively mean he deceives, or deceiver, or trickster. Man, that is no good. Oh, no wonder his name is Jacob, for he has deceived me twice. First taking my birthright, and now stealing my blessing. Oh, haven't you saved even one blessing for me? This is an interesting idea of blessings being irrevocable. It's the first time we really see anything like that. It seems like such a weird thing, like just bless him. Just bless him. Bless him. Bless your other son. It's fine. Can't you curse the other son now and then bless him in a new way to this? Like, what do you do? Just, that's an interesting concept that I just want to kind of put a pin in for a second. The idea of a blessing being irrevocable, of it being this one-time thing, and Esau saying, look, he's taking my birthright and now he's stealing my blessing. But those are two separate things. That's a very interesting thing. You got this birthright, anything that's coming to you on a worldly level, but you also have this blessing, inheritance of blessings. That's an interesting concept to think of here too. Haven't you saved even one blessing for me? Like, to think that you've only got this limited amount of blessings that you can give, that's a really interesting concept, and that's not really something we've seen anywhere else that I caught. So that's just an interesting concept I want to hold on to and see if that pops up again. Haven't you saved even one blessing for me? Verse 37, Isaac said to Esau, I have made Jacob your master, and have declared that all his brothers will be his servants. I have guaranteed him an abundance of grain and wine. What else is there left to give? Esau pleaded, not one blessing left for me? Oh, my father, bless me too. Then Esau broke down and wept. His father Isaac said to him, you will live off the land for what it yields, and you will live by your sword. You will serve your brother for a time, but then you will shake loose from him and be free. Not as fancy a blessing as was given to the deceiver Jacob, but interesting that he gives that as the statement. You're going to live off the land for what it yields. You'll live by your sword. You'll serve your brother for a time, but then you're gonna shake loose from him. You'll be free. And then, here's the last part of this chapter, which is exactly what you would expect to happen. It's titled, Jacob Flees to Paddan Aram. Jacob knows he better get out of there, because that inside mama's boy is about to get whooped by Esau, I'm sure. Esau hated Jacob because he had stolen his blessing. So he had stolen his, he's already tricked him out of his birthright, right? But you can't have too much like anger held on to you for that, because like that wasn't like a trick. It wasn't like he really deceived him. Here he definitely deceived him. He's stolen this blessing. Esau hated Jacob because, so this is why. And he said to himself, my father will soon be dead and gone, then I will kill Jacob. He said to himself, my father will soon be dead and gone, but then I will kill Jacob. So, again, you get a preview into his thoughts there. This is something he said to himself. But someone got wind of what Esau was planning and reported it to Rebekah. She sent for Jacob and told him, Esau is threatening to kill you. This is what you should do. So again, she's interceding and then trying to make a way for her child, the one that she loves more. Okay? And this is interesting. She says, listen to me, do what I'm telling you to do, which is exactly why I even got into this mess to begin with. But let's see what happens here. This is what you should do. Flee to your uncle Laban in Haran. Stay there with him until your brother's fury is spent. When he forgets what you have done, I will send for you. Why should I lose both of you in one day? Then Rebekah said to Isaac, I'm sick and tired of these local Hittite women. I'd rather die than see Jacob marry one of them. So that seems like a weird aside, but let's break this down for a second. We know that Esau, I keep calling him Harry, sorry, this is a stupid joke. Esau has married 2 Hittite women, and they brought great grief to Isaac and Rebekah. So she's got that. We also see that Rebekah is very much a deceiver in these things, in the way that she's kind of protecting her son and trying to make a way for Jacob to do these things. But she's saying, you got to go, flee to your uncle Laban in Haran. That's her brother, which we remember from earlier chapters. Okay, so he's going back to their original kind of homeland, but he's going specifically to be with family, his uncle. You're going to Uncle Laban's. And we saw a little bit of Laban's character, I think. I read into it a little, obviously, in those other things. So I'm interested to see how that kind of plays out. I hope you are too. But she says, flee there, and then she's saying, look, stay there until your brother's fury is spent. When he forgets what you've done, I'll send for you, okay? And she said, why should I lose both of you one day? She's protecting her children and her family in a very odd way, but also, like, you know, Isaac's obviously about to pass away, and she's just, I don't know, she's making very odd choices here. But one interesting thing that she definitely has her head to do is then she says to Isaac, I'm sick and tired of these local Hittite women. She speaks immediately of something that is mutually frustrating and bringing great grief to them, and that they have seen happen with Esau, and she's putting a focus back on Esau and the grief that he causes them, even though Jacob has caused them great grief, and now this huge tension between the brothers, the hatred, so much so that one wants to kill the other, which we've seen before between brothers in Genesis. But here's what's interesting. She uses that or redirects the focus and then says, I'd rather die than see Jacob marry one of them. So it's like, yeah, Jacob's a trickster and a deceiver, but at least he hasn't married those Hittite women. In fact, I've sent him away to go hang out with my uncle. That's where you found a great woman like me. So let's let him go and find a woman there. So it's like she's explaining why he's fleeing, and she's giving a justification for that. And that's what people do when they want to justify things. And she spoke immediately to a unified passion of something, even a negative passion, a hatred, if you will, or a grief or a disturbance. All right. Interesting that she has that there. And now we move to 28.